Hi everyone, welcome to our Maganda Makers Mastermind e-circle for the month of June. I don't know where half the year has gone, but it's gone very quickly indeed. So it's a pleasure today to welcome Alex. Alex Birch is a colleague of mine in Good Return, and her role is as a grants writer for Good Return. And I know a number of you often ring up Karen and myself and others in the team and ask around all things to do with grants. So I just thought it would be a good opportunity for Alex to share some of her wisdom. And Alex is from Melbourne, but currently traveling in Asia and residing in Europe. Isn't it? France or Germany or so she's a bit of a traveller, our Alex, so she always has a good story to tell. So thanks, Alex, for taking the time today. And I'll hand over to you, and you might want to tell us a couple of stories about yourself. You've got a very interesting life.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was really excited to join you and a little bit nervous, actually. So yeah, thank you. It's really an honor to come on and talk with you all. And please feel free. I know that some of you weren't able to attend today, but if you do have questions in the future, please feel free to send them through to Marie, and we can maybe do like a Q&A over email or something like that instead. So yeah, I'm joining today from Cambodia. Good Return has an office here in Phnom Penh, so I've been meeting our colleagues over here. And yeah, I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country, but I myself am not currently on country. So I thought instead I might acknowledge the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, which was the land and seas where I was born and where I grew up. And I would love to pay my respect to their elders, past and present, as well as any of those who are of your lands that you're calling in from today, and acknowledge your relationship to the lands and waterways, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. So yeah, thank you again for having me today. I thought this session would be a real 101 class. So we're gonna keep it quite simple, and then yeah, if you do have more questions or we feel that it might be worth doing a second one, maybe in the future we could do a part 2, and that could be a slightly more advanced class. But just so that everyone sort of can catch up and stay on the same page, I thought we would start with some real basics, especially around terminology, because I think in the industry and just in general, we can very easily use sort of different terms and forget that actually it's not commonly used in spoken language. Marie, do you think we could go to the next slide?
Yes. And I've also shared my screen with you as well, but I'm happy to sort of push the buttons. It's no problem.
Oh, story. I can't just take your son's, And why would you believe other children? Yeah. Well, they seem the same thing.
Sally, good morning. Stories. Do you want to put yourself on mute, love? Thank you. Good morning to you. This is our presenter today is Alex, and she's just made a start. Thanks. Back over to you, Alex.
No worries. So yeah, sorry, I don't actually have access to changing the slides. So thanks, Marie. Are you able to go to the next one as well? We'll go to the first Grants 101.
Does that not? Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yeah.
Is that what you would like? Yeah.
That is perfect. So yeah, so I thought let's start really simple. What is a grant? So as I've written here, it's often money given by a government or a charity that does not need to be repaid. So it's not a loan. It's money for a certain project, and that's the other thing, is that it's normally given to further a project, to build something, maybe to help an idea grow or get a business up to its next stage. So you'll have an objective, and the donor, the people who are giving the money, they'll have an objective, and together the idea is that that money is going to help sort of propel those two ideas. Another thing that I thought is worth mentioning is often around grants we use the term project, and I thought it's worth clarifying what we mean by project, because this can be a bit confusing, because you might think, well, I want money for my business, and that's not a project, or what is a project? What's the difference? But I think just for simplicity's sake, we can assume that the word project can be used interchangeably with business or enterprise or idea or plan or movement. You know, it's really whatever it is that you're looking for money for is your project. So we'll see that word used a lot through this discussion, and just also if you yourself are writing grants, you'll see project, and that's what it means. The next question, am I ready to apply for a grant? Well, we're going to see. On the next slide, we'll go through some of the things that you can start, some of the questions you can start asking yourself to see if you're ready. Grants are available for all kinds of projects. So it could be an arts idea, business venture, startup, perhaps some research you'd like to do. Could be to support an environmental or conservation idea, or for your education. So, you know, you can really start thinking quite broadly about what it is that you're looking for funding for. There's generally, if you have a project, there's no doubt that there's probably a grant out there for you. Which brings us to the question, how do I actually find grants? So there are heaps and heaps of websites that list available grants. Some of them are paid. So the ones I've listed here are all free. These are all government ones, or yeah, most of them are government sites. So you don't have to pay to access these. And you don't need to sign up either. So they're just like a database, and you can go on and use their filters to work out. So for example, if you're looking for a grant for an arts project, you might filter down so that you're only looking for that, so that they only show the grants available for that kind of project, and maybe within your region as well. And then I've listed a few different terms that you could Google that might just give you a heads, you know, a bit of a start. So that could be like Google Arts Grants Australia, or First Nations or Indigenous grants, or small business grants, and these terms will show up some of these databases, but then also some individual organisations which might have just a one-off grant. I'll say here that it can be quite time-consuming looking for grants, and quite exhausting. This is my whole job, and I find this bit the most sort of exhausting bit, because you are really having to look in the details and checking eligibility and looking closely, and then when you decide maybe they're not quite right for you, you need to actually come back the next week and look again. You have to be quite persistent with it. Essentially, you won't get the grants if you're not looking and applying for the grants, but that does take a lot of time, and I understand it's quite exhausting. I mean, it really is. So yeah, we'll get back to that, but I just wanted to mention that it's not as simple as just searching, and I understand it can be quite an emotional process as well, because you really it's like applying for a job or something like this. You're putting a lot of yourself into it, and giving a lot of energy. Are we able to go to the next slide?
It seems to take me pushing the buttons a few times, eh?
That's all good.
Mm.
Ah, perfect. So I've drawn these ideas actually from a worksheet that Marie, or that is put up on the Maganda Makers website by Granted, and it's sort of a getting started sheet. And I thought it was actually a really useful resource because it gives you some questions that you could be asking yourself before you look for a grant, to determine if you're ready and what kind of grants that you're looking for. And this is a really good exercise to do, because actually these questions are the same questions often that you're going to see in the grants application anyway. You'll have to tweak your answers a bit so that you're tailoring your project to the specific grant that you're applying for, but this is going to give you a really good start and get you thinking, I think, and also practice selling your project. So you might have actually seen a lot of these questions in the business plan that you've prepared for yourself. They're quite similar, but the difference here is that I suppose you're selling the idea to someone who doesn't know your project, and you're trying to, I guess, justify the longevity of the project and why you believe it's going to be successful with their funding. So it's a slightly different angle, but similar questions that you probably would have worked through already when creating your business plan. Maybe a helpful way to think about it is as if you were talking with a friend and explaining your project to a friend who doesn't know anything about it. And so you're sort of wanting to keep it in really clear, concise words. So I'll go through some of these questions, but then you can refer back to this slide at any time if you need some as a reference. And there's also the worksheet, which is up on the website too. So yeah, under project description, you're going to look at what is your project actually doing? What does it want to achieve? What is your vision or your mission? You probably would have written a mission statement under your business plan. So that can go here, and then looking at the objectives. I suppose the difference as well here between this and your business plan is that you might be seeking money for something within your business. So for example, maybe you run workshops or consultant, you're a consultant and run sort of kind of group education or that sort of thing, and that's all going really well, but you're seeking funding so that you can take your workshops on the road, and so you're hoping to reach more people and maybe getting out into more regional areas, and so you're specifically looking for funding for travel and accommodation and event spaces or something like that. So that would be kind of the project within your broader enterprise or business. So that's sort of what you might write here, what the objectives are of your project, and then that kind of feeds into need, where you're articulating what the problem is that you're trying to address, or what gaps that you've observed that you feel this project is going to fill. Likewise, beneficiaries and target audience, you're going to look at who your clients would be and how they benefit from this project, how you're going to reach them. Outcomes is a really important area, because this is the bit that's going to be measured, and you can write what you write here can change later. So you might win the grant and then find that you need to change the outcomes, and it could be something that you can have a discussion with the funder about. But you do sort of have to expect that here, this is a bit where they're going to look at this section and see if it aligns with the outcomes that they want to achieve by giving the money, and then also articulate how you're actually going to measure them, so how you're going to know whether or not you succeed in reaching these outcomes. The budget, we're going to go into a little bit more detail a little bit later, but this is where you're writing, actually, this might be the bit where you're talking about the budget as opposed to the budget itself, and this is where you're sort of articulating how much money do you actually need, and what costs do you need to cover. Are you contributing any funding yourself, or do you have other donors who are already contributing funding? And also, do you have any in-kind support? And we're going to cover this in the next slide, but in-kind support is non-financial support. So it could be volunteers, or someone gives you a car, or something like this, so that you can travel around. And then supporting materials, and this bit, even for me, I find can come quite at the end, because you're like, oh, I better add some things in it. So if you can, this is something, if you could prepare in advance, is really helpful. And these are things like a business plan. You might have some case studies, things that you have successful projects that you've already sort of done, or people that you've helped, or I don't know, it really depends on your business, but examples of success within your business, and these can be really small, but that just gives the funder a bit of a taste of what you do. And then in addition to that, any evidence that you have of need in your area, so this could be academic research, or media articles, or quotes from people in your area saying, we really need this, or statistics, or anything like this. And along with that is letters of support. So there might be people within your community who write a letter supporting your project and supporting why they think it's an important venture, and why it deserves funding. And that's really, really valuable. That's like a reference if you're applying for a job, that sort of acts in the same way. And yeah, in addition to that, any photos or videos you might have of your project, or interviews that you've done, or media articles that have come out about it, any of these kind of things. Basically, any evidence that you have that is going to support the viability of your project and the need for your project can go here under supporting materials, and you can normally attach that at the end of your application. I might just stop there and see if there's any questions. We have a bit of a Q&A at the end. Marie, as well, you might have thought about some questions that people have could have here.
Yeah, it was just a couple of things. So the in-kind support, but I know you might chat about that a bit more when we come to the budget, and probably just if you could give a example, just a mini example around what might be a good case study. So for example, a couple of our women have cultural tourism businesses, so they take customers out on country and share with them about their culture. So what might be their case study they could do? Is that the same thing as testimonial or feedback, or is that different again, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, it's all a bit of a grey area, but I mean, I would say testimonial or feedback would technically fall under this sort of letters of support or references, but you could definitely include testimonials within your case study. So that's a really great example. In terms of, if you're doing sort of cultural tours, a case study might just be you write up the story of one of the days or tours that you did, and you can just sort of talk through it and talk through the kind of conversations you had, and the kind of questions they asked, and the impression that they, that your visitors had, and you can write that even from your own perspective. You don't need a testimonial in that, but that obviously also strengthens your case. But yeah, it can really be, write it as if you're just writing a story, or writing an account of a successful day out, or something that, and again, also it doesn't have to be successful. You could talk about maybe some challenges that you had, and how you overcame them, or how you addressed them, because funders are probably quite sensitive to people talking about their projects as if they are faultless and have no flaws, and they understand that in the real world, we all encounter problems and challenges, and they actually would really love to see that you have the ability to navigate them and work out solutions within them. So you could, in your case study, talk about a total disaster of a day if you felt that within that there was some problem solving that you were able to demonstrate, or a solution that you came up with within those challenges that you
But
encountered.
yeah,
And that would actually look very attractive.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because we do have lots of challenges, but I think as women in business here that we're also amazing at flexing and flowing and problem solving. But sometimes when we do a grant, we feel like we do have to put our best foot forward, but just that practical idea you gave right then, sharing a challenge we had, and then explaining, well, what did we do about that, and how did we still say it's a cultural tour. Like I was talking to Jane, who does cultural tours over in Fitzroy, and so one of her challenges was around not having enough flour with her to make the damper. She wasn't expecting as many guests, so she still made the damper, but she just turned it into like a little taster, as opposed to everyone having the damper, and everyone was still happy because at least they got a little something. So I just thought that was just, brilliant, but that's some of the reality of what can happen.
Yeah, that's great. I think presenting the reality as reality is super important, and it also means down the track, if you do receive the funding and there are hiccups and challenges, that the funder knows that from the beginning, and that they're sort of going to work with you through that, and they're going to understand that maybe you don't reach your outcomes in the way that you thought you would, and they sort of understand that context. So yeah, I think that is great. It's a really good example, Marie. Shall we go to the next slide, or did you have any other, or does anyone have any questions on this?
Sally, have you got a question at this stage?
No, not yet. I just heard Alex was saying at the end of the session there'll be questions and answers. I might just leave it till then, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, because there's some things I want to ask, but that'll come later, I reckon. I'm just taking a lot of notes down, trying to keep up.
Yeah, that's a really good slide, the getting started one. It's a good way to just set things out.
Yeah, and we can perhaps even screenshot this slide and put it up on the website or something, so it's people can see it directly.
Marie, can I just ask can we get a hands on the slides, or?
Certainly, yes.
Yeah,
Yep. Okay. And I will have them on the website, Sally, but I'll specifically email them to you as well.
Yeah, thank you. But okay, can I just? I've got a question now. Sorry.
Marie, go ahead.
Okay, just going back to that the slide before, the previous slide. Is that the kind of format to base your planning around, like the grant plan? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, that's right. So
okay,
these questions these are kind of common questions that you're going to see in a grant. So if you want to kind of get started before you even find one you're looking for, these are going to be a really good place to sort of lay out your thinking. And then, of course, you'll have to tweak them for specific grants to make sure that they fit kind of within the criteria.
Because I always wondered if there was a sort of specific, like a grant format that most grants have for you to be able to apply for grants.
A specific what? Sorry, I missed the
format. A format. A format. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about it. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was just thinking like for example, in our teaching we have planning formats. So we have a certain format to plan for certain subject areas, or a format for when we do excursions and things like that. So does these grants have sort of certain formats that you follow to apply for it? That's all. Because I've got a few of my BBN club members. I'm setting a few of them up now to start applying for grants, but through the format. I think, Marie, we had one in one of our packages that we had, and I'm helping Margie and Bernadette with theirs. That's all.
Oh, that's excellent. Yes, and Yeah, and unfortunately there's not like a set template. Like every grant holder seems to like to be a bit fancy and put their
Okay.
own little flavor on it. But this
Mm-hmm.
here, this is like the broad brush stroke. Like, and that's
Okay.
why I say, like, even if you can just have this folder ready with some answers, and then you can take these answers and adapt it into the format. And some of it really is quite frustrating, isn't it, Alex? I think of some of our smaller grants we've gone for, and the list of questions is so big. And then we've gone for bigger grants, and the questions have seemed simpler. So there's not like a formula, is there?
Mm.
No, that's right. Sometimes you can spend so much time applying for a grant that's not even really worth, in the scheme of things, that much funding. And yeah, and then you apply for, you know, I mean, in theory, $500,000, and they really trust you, and they just want to sort of see that they can trust you to make good, solid decisions, and that's it. Apart from that, it's over to you. So
Yes.
it's really, there's no rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
But these questions I've taken from a worksheet that Marie has already put up on the website. It's
Yeah.
called a granted project. Oh, I can't remember the exact name, but it's on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's actually, you can use that itself. It's the same questions here pretty much.
Hey, Alex, I reckon the women would love to hear about that spreadsheet that you showed me where you've got your answers ready for things that are asked often, because it takes a fair bit of time to do those first set of questions. And I reckon that's really clever how you've made your life easier with each one that you do by putting common things ready to go, so you don't have to go through every time and think, oh, what's the ABN and what's the mission, like what's my big dream for what I'm trying to achieve here. So
that's a really good point, and we were sort of coming to that a little bit in the next slide. But yeah, to have a place where you have, whether that's just a folder, which Mary has suggested, where you just sort of have all of these documents in there, that might be a good place to start anyway, where you put all your case studies and your letters of support and your business plan and answers to these questions. But yeah, I also, because in my work, I'm working across several different projects, so Maganda Makers, and then some other initiatives that Good Return does. I have a big Excel sheet which has all of this key information. Yeah, especially like there's kind of annoying details like your ABN or, you know, those sort of technical numbers and things. It's all in one place on this Excel sheet. And I also have a link to all of the grants that I have previously written for that project, so that I can go into them and just copy and paste paragraphs that I've already written before, and then tweak them accordingly to the new one, so that you're not writing the same thing again and again. So yeah, thanks, Carmen. That's true. The more you can do to kind of mechanize your project a bit while still maintaining a personal thing is going to help you become less frustrated too. You don't want to be writing from scratch every time.
Okay.
So these three questions here, Karen sent to me as sort of frequently asked questions that people are often asking her. So I thought we can just go through them, and then if we need to clarify, please let me know, and I can go into a bit more detail. The first question is, what does "how will the project benefit others" mean? So I thought another way of asking this is, how does your project or business help your community or the people that you're trying to help? So some answers to that might be that you employ local people, or that you improve the local economy. You know, you're bringing money in. If you offer a tourism venture, then tourists are coming in and spending more money in your community. So that could then be improving the regional economy. You could be, you know, growing your sector. You're providing tourism, or you're sort of growing the bush medicine sector, or growing the tourism sector in your area. So these are all sort of benefiting others. It's a really broad question. So basically, how is your venture helping other people? But you can think quite abstract about that.
But at the same
I'll stop
time,
there.
it's not being too. I like the way that you've, employees, like how you're helping the local community around, them getting more work, for example. So you might have a business, because of your business, you're now creating work for another type of business,
Yeah.
So
Or you could be
those are-
role modeling
Yes.
leadership in your community.
Yes.
And showing other people that they can, they could also start a business or also work in this sector, or giving them confidence or mentoring other people. That's a really good way of benefiting others.
That's right. It's good.
The next question is, what do the words income, in-kind, and forecast mean? So income is really simply money received for your product or service. So any money that you earn through producing your product or offering your service is your income. Income might also come under grants that you've received or things like that, but generally it's in reference to money that you have earned. Any money that is coming in, income to your business. In kind is payment received through goods or services. So payment that you've had that's not money. So that could be that someone donates a car to your business, or donates a computer, or donates their services. They might volunteer for you, or for example, they might help you with some accounting or sort of financial knowledge, and that would be in-kind support. It's helping your business, it's helping you grow, and it's essential. You need this, so it's very helpful, but it's not payment in money. Maria, is that clear?
Yeah, I was just, Sally, you got some swags, didn't you? You know those swags you got? That was in kind. Did you and Benny have to make a payment for those, or were you gifted those?
No, those tents, no, they were given. They were gifted.
Tents, I mean,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's an example of an in-kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, in-kind donation.
Yeah.
I reckon it's really interesting because that shows funders that other people and other businesses really believe in you and want to be part of your vision and your mission. So it's actually really great. And there is a financial value. If you had to buy those yourself, you know what they're worth. So you do,
That's
they
right.
do have a money value, but somebody else is supporting you with them.
Yeah, and it was nice that the manager of LQ offered it to us. So
Yeah, and that's something to. That becomes part of your documentation, Sally, in terms of demonstrating what Carmen just said, that you've got support of larger tour operators. That's a really good thing.
all right, so I could put that down as my like a case study.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And you can put that in your budget, which we'll get to later, as in-kind support. So you can sort of say the value of that, the financial value, but you wouldn't. Yeah, and so they can kind of see what is being given.
Okay, keep going.
Is that you can show the potential
Sorry,
funder.
Alex, you kind of froze. You froze then.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Is this better?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I was just saying that, what Carmen and Maria's point is exactly right. Any way that you can show a potential funder that you have broader support and community support is really, really positive, and just lends more credibility and confidence into your project. And then the third term is forecast. So what does forecast mean? I mean, this is kind of a broad term. It can be used in different contexts, but in general, a forecast is a prediction or estimate of the future. So generally, in a grant sense, they're probably asking How much profit do you expect to make in a month or year? What is your forecast profit? And what expenses do you forecast? What expenses do you expect to see? So it's sort of a future looking question. It doesn't necessarily mean that is what you're going to spend, or it is how much money you're going to make, but it's how much money you think you will make, or how much money you think you will spend, based on your workings of your expenses. So it's a guess, basically, a guess of the future. Is that clear? I'm happy to clarify.
Yep, no, that's good, Alex, really good.
Okay. And then the last question was, do my achievements to date mean how much money I have made? I've written here no, but actually, I mean, it could mean that. It could mean that you've successfully shown an income or profit of X amount, and that's really positive and shows that you've run a really financially viable business in the last year. But it's not generally a question purely about money. Generally, what they're asking is it could be things like, what challenges you've overcome, like we discussed earlier, and how you overcome those challenges would be an achievement. It could also be just talking about the products you've designed, how many products you've sold, or the services that you've run, and why you've decided to offer these services in these ways, and the kind of feedback that you've received. So yeah, positive feedback is really would be an achievement. Maybe you've won an award or received some kind of recognition within your community for this. That would be an achievement. Or just your business story in general. Again, talking about the challenges and how you got here. These would all be examples of achievements. So don't feel like just because you haven't made any money yet, or that you don't have any achievements. That's not the case. It could be one of your achievements, but it's not essential.
It's awesome. I love that you've put there about the business story, because a lot of the members do have an amazing backstory that's got them to the point where they are now, and it might seem pretty ordinary to them, but I think in sharing it in that grant application, again, it shows all sorts of things, how resilient they can be, how how they've come to like what's their why behind why they have started their business, which often relates to family and community.
Do you reckon this might be a good place to put in, when I hear about the businesses in Maganda Makers, I reckon you already know about different ways to succeed without measuring it with a dollar sign. And you know that we talk about people, planet, and profit as the triple bottom line. So 3 different ways to measure success, but that might be a new trendy term, newish trendy term for us. But actually, isn't that what we have to learn from you that you've been doing throughout time? And so I imagine sharing that you're collaborating with other businesses. So if you have, I'm trying to imagine, Sally, like, is there a local business that might sell bush foods or could cater the final dinner of your tours, and showing that you work together, collaborate, have partnerships. That sort of links into in-kind as well, maybe using or working together with other Aboriginal businesses, employing somebody for the first time, even no matter whether it's part-time every now and then, contract, whatever, but showing that you're creating roles for other people in your family and community. That's so special about the way you do business, and it's a really great way to teach and show others how inclusive you are.
Yeah, and we definitely have a lot of that going on. So like Jane, again, with her tours in Fitzroy, she's now got 2 or 3 family members helping. And like Sally, with your tours, you go out on country there at Doon, don't you, with and Johnny or Money, many take those tours?
Yeah, we do. I just had
Yeah.
one last Saturday, and we took a family of did that on my own with the family, the German family, and they made their damper, showed them how to do that. There was a bit of fishing, taught them how to throw a fishing line. They didn't know how to do that. They didn't know how to put the bait on the hooks. They didn't know where to stand on the side of the riverbank. Even showing them how to light a fire. Some of them
Wow.
were. Yeah. And then we also, and what sort of the main highlight was that we took a bit of paint out as well. So we did painting, and Lou came with me on that day. And now we're going to implement looking and showing them how to paint with ochre now, like the ochre is from the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. So already you've brought in, that's I guess, and that's good for you, Carmen, to highlight that to us out loud, because a lot of these things we just do naturally,
Right.
but they're actually different, and they are a measure
And
of
beautiful and worth
Yeah.
telling people
Yeah.
about. It will be really respected about the way you naturally think and act.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Alex, back over to you.
Yeah, no, I think Carmen and Sally, the fantastic points there. Yeah, so this is just a little tips and tricks section. So this can be a bit of a discussion, but again, I didn't want to make this too complicated. I feel like at this stage, I don't want to overwhelm people and scare them away from grants. So this is really just a guide to getting started, and you can build up after over some time. But a really good starting place is to start a grants folder on your computer. I mean, it could also be a physical folder actually, but if it's digital, that's going to help you in applying for your grants, because you'll be using that a lot when you're applying online. So in this folder, as we said before, you would have your business plan, you would have your budget, which we're going to talk about next. You would have letters of support, again, your business story, maybe some photos or videos, all of these sort of supporting documents that we've been discussing, just for easy access. So that every time you apply for a grant, you're like, okay, it's all there. I just go there and I grab that. And it can also be financial documents. So documents that are like showing that your business is a registered business, or maybe it's a non-profit business, or any of these kind of official documents too are really helpful to have in this grants folder. And you can just keep adding to these, because you won't have everything at the beginning, but as you apply for grants, you'll have to go looking for something here and looking for something there, and every time you do, you can pop it in this folder.
Alex?
Yeah.
So funny, like I didn't know anything about that, but I've already started a folder and I put everything in it. But I've also started doing like a PowerPoint presentation. Is that something useful?
Yeah. And is this a PowerPoint presentation that you would think that maybe you could present to funders?
Yeah. So I've got diagrams, I've got like pictures labeled, I've got material, everything and financial side of things.
That is.
But I was just mucking around, but that's all. Now that you're saying this,
I mean, you're like more than halfway there with that, so that is perfect.
Okay. That whole preparation phase, before you actually get to the grant, like having that ready is so good, because when you get to do the grant, you can start to feel the pressure, but you can help relieve that pressure by having this stuff all ready to go, even like letters of support, just for who you are as a business owner and what you do in the community, So, and your photos, like building up your photo portfolio, which I know you're doing, Sally. So, I mean, you're such an organized person too. So I think you could probably show people how to develop their grants folder.
Mary, don't. I've already started.
Oh, you've already started with
Margie and Bernie's they're my little guinea pigs, and so the things that you send through Maganda Makers, like I take snippets and I put it onto my little group messenger, and I let them know, so they get the information from me through our messenger from you
That's
guys. So
awesome.
yeah.
It's great.
Sorry, it's raining season here and it's just started raining. So.
Hey, while you move, can I tell an idea that we tried just recently with a grant for Maganda makers? I was thinking about the power of Aboriginal women yarning and telling stories. And so actually put in a big application, a link to the video of Tash talking to some women about Maganda makers and what it does. And I wonder for some of the women who may not, I mean, it's hard if you're shy, but if you think about different ways to tell the story of why you care about your business and what you do and your employees, you can do it in your own words, literally just on your phone. And when funders, they're really trusting and believing in you. And so if you can share a bit of yourself and maybe get someone to help you do it, then that might really be a way that you feel more comfortable with. Like, don't be afraid to use your real voice, not just writing down your voice. So I hope that helps a little bit.
That's a
That's
really
an
good
excellent
idea.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. As if you're having a yarn. You could even get a friend to sit with you and ask you questions and actually just have a yarn together on camera, or even if you really don't want to visually be recorded, you could have just your voice recorded and set up like a mini interview, and then you could just relax into it.
Yeah, imagine having your voice being heard, but your pictures being seen of the work you do. If it's a bit scary seeing your own face when you're talking, but it'd be so good. Maybe we could do some of that at the camp.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just storytelling, just yarning.
Oh, so fun.
Yeah. Can I just check? I know there's a little bit of background noise here. Is that coming through?
Yeah, it is a bit, but it's okay, Alex. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that.
So far, it's just music.
Yeah, it's very. They play the same 7 songs on repeat every single day, all day. Anyway, so the next point I was going to make is that Marie and the Maganda Makers team have put together a really fantastic selection of resources, which you can find over on the website. So I would really encourage you going over there and just sort of in your spare time, maybe not when you're actually applying for a grant, but just as you're sort of starting to seek it out and work out what you want to do, just go through those grants, and it's just going to help you think about your business in this framework, and also so and oh, that's right, and we'll also give you some other ideas that I might not have included in this, but might trigger some other things that you can include. So then the next one I was gonna say, just as a few tips. The biggest thing, I think I mentioned this earlier about applying for grants, is that you just have to keep applying, and actually the majority of the applications that you write and submit are probably going to be unsuccessful. That's just the way it is. Often there's only 1 or 2 projects that will be selected for funding, and the criteria can be very, very specific, and sometimes there can be a greater agenda that you're not sort of aware of, or that you just are not fitting into. And so this is where the process can be really disheartening, and sometimes you almost have to remove yourself a little bit emotionally from it, and be a little bit mechanical about it, while at the same time still obviously wanting to put your heart into it and share your love for your business and your idea. But it does require some persistence and a lot of resilience. So I just want to be clear about that from the beginning, because it can be difficult, but it doesn't mean just because you don't get the funding, it doesn't mean that you failed or that you wrote a poor application and that you can't do this. It really doesn't mean that at all. It's just circumstantial, and it's just a numbers game. But you definitely are not going to get the funding if you're not applying.
Mm.
So you do have to be in it to win it.
Now you have to
And the
remember
other-
that the funders have such a limited amount of money and lots of people apply for them. So I reckon it would be hard to have their job as well, because they've got to try and choose the best of the best of the best. So they often have a lot of applications that meet the criteria and sound great. It doesn't mean that you're not good for it. It's just some other great business or idea got it this time, and you might get it the next time or the third time.
Yeah, and the other point to make there is that, and I've had this feedback before from funders, is that they really love to see persistence. So if they see that you've applied 3 or 4 years in a row, which I know that you get to the point you're like, why am I still applying 3 or 4 years down the track? But if you are, and over that time your business is growing and you're getting you're able to show different things over the time, that they'll remember that and they'll see that, and that will be very, very positive for them, because they're going to see that you are committed to your business, and they're actually going to see the growth that you're talking about doing. They're going to see that demonstrated over the years as you apply. So applying for the same grant year on year or round on round, although a bit disheartening, is actually will work in your favor, or is likely to work in your favor. So yeah, I hope that's not too negative, but I just wanted to put that
Yep,
up
no,
there because it is a reality.
Yep, no, that's cool, Alex. And we've got about 10 minutes.
Okay. So I'll go through the next 3 points quite quickly.
Thank you.
The second one is when you are looking for grants, when you first look, check eligibility, because that is something that is really sometimes you think, oh yeah, this is a perfect grant for me, da, 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 and then there's just like a little line in there that actually excludes you from it. So this could be that this grant is not funding human resources, and maybe for your project you are looking to employ some people and that's what you want the funding for, and they are just they're not going to touch that, so that's going to exclude you. Or sometimes they don't, or quite often they don't want to fund projects that like fund retrospectively, so fund things that have already come into being. But you can get around this a little bit by how you frame your project. So it might have already started, but you can kind of say, no, we're starting a new phase now, and so from this phase onwards is what we want the funder to phase. But you just look closely at the eligibility, and if you're unsure or confused, I really recommend calling or emailing the organisation. They're really always happy to help and provide some clarity. They also don't want you putting all your time into an application when you're not even eligible for it. And it helps you build a relationship with them. And so they're going to see your name come up when you do put in the application, and they'll remember that they had a conversation with you. So that's just building a relationship, and that will be really positive. So I really recommend that that's probably the very first thing you should do when you find a grant that you think looks great, is check the eligibility. And if you're unsure, email and contact. I'll just keep moving. The next point is similar to this, but confirm your alignment with the grant objectives. So they're going to have some outcomes on there that they want to achieve by giving them money. And so they often have this, not always, but the majority of the time they will have this. So you're going to want to have a look at that and see if that aligns with the outcomes that you expect to get from your project. Just this is how you're going to sell your idea, because this is essentially how they're deciding between different applications, is if it aligns with their objectives. So the more you can align with them, and you don't have to align with every single one, but the more you can, and the more you can convince them that your project helps them meet their goals, the more successful you're going to be. And then the very last thing, which I think is really important to note, is just trying, with all of that being said and done, the clearer and simpler you can be in your writing and in your expression of your story, the better. Because they're receiving so many grant applications every round, and if you can convey your story with as little sort of fancy words or fluff as possible, the better. So you don't have to be a fancy writer to write a good grant application. I would recommend with each question trying to answer it succinctly, simply within the first 1 to 2 lines. And then after that, you can go into a bit more detail and just use your own words as if you were talking to a friend when you're writing. You know, it can be, you can write as if you're talking. So yeah, I'll leave that there. I don't know if there's any questions on that.
I'm just trying to move to the next slide, Alex. Don't know why it keeps sticking. Never mind.
Can I add a little tip and trick in there?
Please.
I reckon we all care about what we do so much and we think about it all the time. Sometimes it's really hard to think, to imagine what it sounds like to somebody who's never heard of it before. And Alex and I are really lucky because we'll work on grants together, which Sally, you said you're already doing with and for other people. And I reckon that's actually an amazing thing to do because you get to pass it around. You don't have to write a great one the first time you write it. You just get started and then you come back and look at it again and think, oh, maybe I could say that a bit differently because they've never heard of this before. And if you get somebody, when you think you're done, to just read it and just with a, please, have I answered the questions? Do I meet the criteria? Does this make sense to you as somebody who isn't in my business all the time? Is it like really great last check before you submit? Yeah, that's all. Have a buddy.
Yeah, 100%. That's so important. And yeah, Carmen is the best buddy. So I can speak from experience. That's really, and everyone needs that. It doesn't matter how good a writer you are or how experienced you are. Everyone needs.
And it makes it a little bit more fun.
An editor. Yeah, it makes it more fun, and you can complain then too.
Yeah,
which is nice. So, Marie, do we have time to go through this budget?
Yes, well, yeah, we've got about another 5 minutes. It's okay.
Okay. I'm going to go through this really quickly, and then I'm also going to say that I think if we find this valuable, it's worth doing maybe another session at another date, and we can go through this in a bit more detail if people find it useful. So I've put a budget example here, and this is actually a template from an application that I'm looking to apply for right now. And it's quite a complicated one. It's the actual grant itself is a sort of a big international thing, but I thought the template looked pretty simple. I'm not going to talk about the actual template too much. That's just an example there that you can look at. But I'm gonna go through these bullet points on the side about the kind of questions that you're going to ask and the kind of things that you would likely include in a budget, and then you can sort of see them demonstrated in this screenshot that I've put here. So the things that you generally include in a budget are your expenses, so the costs that you need to cover to sell your product or offer your service, the project timeline. So this is important because you might be talking about you need money to fund some stuff, but you're not asking for money for stuff indefinitely. You're asking for over a timeline. So you need to calculate what the hourly rate is, how many hours a week they're going to work, and how many weeks or months or a year or whatever it is they're going to work. And that's going to give you the final cost of how much those human resources, those people are going to cost your business. So that's why the project timeline is important. And the timeline, it's not just for human resources, but that's an example of where that would come into your calculations. It could be, you want to pay rent and you need to know how many months you're paying rent for the timeline of this project. You need to look at what the grant excludes. So things they're not going to fund. And so you need to make sure that you're not putting anything in this budget, or you're not asking them to pay for anything in this budget that is on their exclusions list. You could include it on the budget if you're paying for it, and then you just put that in the line of what you're going to pay. But you can't be asking them for that. again, this is where and then you're going to put your estimated, you might put your estimated revenue or other money coming in from other donors. You're also going to include things like in-kind support, which we talked about before. So the value, of those swags or any other kind of support, accountancy support or things. And then another thing that is really, really important, I mean, you don't always have to do this, but it's very helpful, and often donors will ask for this, is to justify the costs, the expenses that you're putting on there with quotes or invoices. So if you say, let's say a vehicle, then you need to find somewhere, either someone like an ad online that says that selling this car for this amount, and you can say, well, it's probably going to cost, I don't know, $20,000, and so then you can show a screenshot of that ad. Or maybe you're asking someone to do a service for you, a builder to come and fix up a property, and so you'll get a quote from that builder, and you can include that quote as a supporting document, just to show that you're not making up all of these costs. And if you can't get a quote or an invoice, you can just note that and say, look, this is a estimated idea, and we will get a proper quote when we have the funding secured. But the more that you can back up your costs with evidence, so with invoices or with receipts, maybe receipts from things you bought in the past, the more you can do that, the more credibility and legitimacy your budget is going to have, and they're going to believe you more. So yeah, I'll note that there, but don't let that stop you either. If you can't get all of these things, don't say, oh, well, that means I can't apply. You can just write a note at the bottom of your budget or in your application that you weren't able to get invoices or quotes at this time. And then, yeah, as well, at the very end, make sure that all the numbers and everything are adding up. The other, I think something I mentioned, if you do have other donors or funders who are contributing costs, this is really great to put here in your budget, because it's showing, like we said before, that other people have confidence in your project and are also contributing, and that the money you're asking from this particular funder, they're not going to carry your whole project, that the project is existing within an ecosystem, a bigger ecosystem. It's not just their money. So they're kind of my big things to be thinking about with a budget. Maria, I don't know if you've got any questions or clarifications or comment here that we should be adding.
No, again, it's a good starting point, and often requires a bit of a deep dive in order to be quite accurate around what some of those expenses might be. Either not quoting too small, but on the other hand, also not being totally exorbitant, so trying to be very realistic with those expenses.
And actually on that, if there are, because I know in the Kimberley things can cost a lot more because you are remote. So if there are things that you're finding that you think, wow, that's going to look like a lot, but it is the reality, then I would talk about that in your application, is talking about, because I think, especially if you're applying for grants from the other side of the country, people really don't have a good idea of how things work in the Kimberley. And I think if you can explain in simple terms all the really obvious stuff that that petrol is really expensive, or that you have to drive thousands of kilometers to get to your job, or all of these kind of stuff, which is obvious to you because you do it in your day-to-day, explain it, put it on paper. There's nothing too silly or too obvious that you can't write. I would assume that you're talking to an alien, actually, when talking about your context.
I personally find the budget a bit scary, and I often feel like, oh, it feels a bit much. So this is the bit where I always need somebody to help me, and where my buddy comes in, and we've like, what do you think this means? What do I think that means? And you guys have Marie and other people that can help check your thinking. Am I doing this the right way? I don't even know. So let's be real about, there are some parts that I might find scary or you might find scary, and between all of us we can figure it out.
That's right. That's good.
Yeah,
Good advice.
it's definitely the scariest part. I hate doing budgets, actually. Actually, just one other point on that, I think, is that this is not set in stone. This is an estimate. Again, this is that word that we used before, a forecast. And generally, anyone who funds your project, especially because you're going to explain the context and you're going to explain your whole story, they're going to be pretty understanding. So if they decide they're going to give you money for your project, and then later on you find, oh, well, my budget isn't exactly how I said, and maybe I'm not spending as much as I thought, or you know, all of these kind of things, you can have a conversation with the funder about that afterwards. You know, it's not written in stone. These can be, like, I mean, you need to try and do as a realistic budget as you possibly can, but no one knows the future. So don't feel like you're gonna, like, you know, plagiarize yourself or whatever by writing the wrong thing. It's okay.
Cool. Excellent. All right.
Yeah, so that would take us to the Q&A if we have time for a Q&A.
Yep, so I'll stop sharing. So Sally, do you want to ask did you have any other questions, or maybe one more question that you've got there?
No, I'm actually think I'm sort of on task. I've had meetings with Talk. I've put in a proposal. I've done all that. I've rang up places for quotes. So I've got all these vehicles that I'm looking at. So they're sending it through. I'm having a dinner meeting with Don Monk from Talk. What else have I done? Yeah, so a lot of quotes are coming in of all the things that I need. I don't have to worry about TANs. So I'll be looking at getting quotes from furnishing so I can get some linen and, you know, all those sort of things that's gonna, yeah. So yeah. And I'm also sharing that on our little messenger with all the other club members.
Yeah, that's great.
But I gotta go because my boss is here.
Yeah, all good. Thank you, Sally. And
Thank you so much.
I'll send you the recording.
Okay, thank you.